This is Sporting Life.
Hi everyone, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing podcast. I am your host, Ben Linfoot, and I am delighted to be joined by Ed Chamberlin, David Johnson, Fran Berry, special guest from Ireland, and Graham Cunningham to discuss the week at Royal Ascot and a quick look ahead as well to the Irish Derby weekend upcoming this weekend. So, welcome along, gents. Ed, we're going to start with you because you've got something to get off your chest.
Potentially. I'm a bit worried about Audie. Where's Audie? Has he been kidnapped?
I can't confirm where he is, but he has been silenced. That's all.
Nice to have Fran on the pod. He's borrowed Stephen Roach's green jersey from the Tour de France all those years ago. Hey, Fran.
Ed, morning all.
Yeah, please forgive me, Scoop. This would be one of my longer answers, I think it's fair to say. Because for once I've actually given some thought to it. And it's probably my equivalent, boring equivalent of GC's fantastic game notes. But I thought Royal Ascot was joyous. I really did. As you know, I've struggled and not really enjoyed a few of the recent big meetings. But last week I felt showcased the best of British on and off the track. It felt like being there was like an amazing escape from the general election, from all of racing's problems, the leadership crisis and so on, and Gareth Southgate's inept midfield. I think we escaped even from that for a few days. Why is it so good? What's the secret is a question a lot of people will be asking over the next few days. For me, it's because Ascot has modernised, and it's modernised cleverly whilst keeping the Royal Meetings tradition, its history, its unique selling points. And most of all, Scoop, it's good fun. Anyone who was there, I think, will agree it's good fun. They look like they were having fun because a modern day Royal Ascot feels like it caters for everyone and every budget, which I'm not sure it used to necessarily do. Nowadays, you've got these Michelin-starred top-class restaurants, but you've also got Luke Harvey dancing in the disco tent in the Windsor enclosure. But most of all, and most important, I think, you've got top-class horses, top-class racing, relentlessly brilliant all week long. The product is absolutely top-notch. And one thing I love most, I think, having come back home, is that my 18-year-old daughter, who enjoys a party, plus my parents, and my dad's in his 80s, both want to come to Royal Ascot next year. To me, that's a good sign. And is it okay for me to have a little rant? You're right, I do have a few things to get off my chest. Normally, I'd sit on my hands and not give these people, how do I describe it? Who they seem to be in a race against each other to be most negative, to try and sap the joy out of our sport at times. And I never want necessarily to give them the oxygen they seem to crave, but I do have a chance to reply. Audie doesn't, because there's a guy who does and Audie will have a blank face. There's a guy who does a YouTube channel called Dave, who I can only assume is Audie, to have a pop at me and ITV. It's so good. It's so good. It made me laugh. He absolutely hates me mentioning football. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and track him down and give him the chance to present at the St. Ledger meeting, maybe, Scoop, because he obviously thinks it's quite easy. But the likes of that, Dave, who I'm sure is an Audie, do need to understand the audience we broadcast to. I say it often. There are 60, 70, 80,000 hardcore racing fans in this country. We broadcast to over 1 million people, often. And that's a lot of sports fans. That's a lot of people who've pressed the wrong button on their remote control. It's a lot of floating voters who watch ITV racing. And Dave, I think it's okay to mention Maradona's Hand of God 38 years on, because that was an incredible story. Someone else described me as a brown nose something, a phrase I haven't heard since probably primary school. You might be right, but listen, you've got to understand the challenge of speaking. Mike Vince, where's Mike Vince when I need him? The challenge of speaking about a royal procession for more than 13 minutes. One day last week, it was over 20 minutes because they were so late. It's hard. It's so hard. When you sell a house, people come round to look at a house or a flat. Do you tell them while they're looking round, the pipes leak, the garden's shit, and all the furniture's falling apart? No, you don't. You've got to try and sell it to them. And I've also taken flack for saying the royal procession needs a modern tweak, which I genuinely think it does. And as DJ often says, you're not allowed to be grey these days, are you? And I'm grey on it. Two more things, Scoop. Sorry. You can edit this all out.
No, the floor is yours.
Betting, another talked about subject. People say we ignore betting. I mean, what rubbish. Betting is central to what we do. It has to be. Last week, Brian was in the ring. He talked to bookmakers. He talked to punters. You remember at Cheltenham, he spoke to Johnny Deneen's and all that lot. Hoyles and Ollie are monitoring the exchanges, which is important too. Myself, I started at Ladbrokes, as you know. I've been a Sky Bet ambassador for 25 years. The only thing I don't like at the minute, it doesn't feel quite right in the cost of living crisis, of publicising monster bets. It just doesn't feel right in the current financial climate. Right or wrong, that's one thing I do think. One podcast at GC wants you and Jim McGrath back as betting pundits.
Really?
To me, you're great journalists, two of the best analysts the sport's ever had. I don't classify you two as betting pundits. And you'll remember the unfair stick Channel 4 got, obviously. That brilliant bit of television with you and Mark Johnson. That's because you were being criticised for talking about betting too much. I mean, it's bonkers. And listen, we don't have Big Mac. Of course we don't have Big Mac. And we do it differently maybe, but we'll never ignore betting. People might not like it, but we need to focus on betting. We need people to bet responsibly, obviously, but we're well aware that betting funds our sport. It's as simple as that. And finally, you'll be pleased to hear, host Scoop, viewing numbers. Now, God, I have to listen to some rubbish spouted. I really do. And I won't often say much in response. There's no point. I held my hands up after the Grand National, which will go up and down. I held my hands up after the Derby, which is a big challenge. And there'll be more bad ones to come. Of course they will. It's a really brutal, tough environment in TV right now. Just ask Anton Deck. But pretty much every other meeting and festival is going okay. In fact, it's going well. Cheltenham, the King George, Goodwood, York, plus Royal Ascot is going really well numbers-wise. I've got some numbers from last week for those who say they dropped Scoop. And this is the first. I've just taken the first day of the Royal meetings as an example.
On Rafael Benitez style here with his list.
Yeah, these are facts.
The list is out.
These are facts. These are facts.
Hang on. I've got Anton Deck on the line here. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. Confirmed.
And there wasn't much football on Tuesday, admittedly, but in 2016, the share on TV for racing, 7.3%. Last week, 12.4%. The peak number in 2016, 846. Last week, well over 1 million. Now, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I've got no problem at all with comment and opinion. That's part of the job. I've got no problem when anyone wants to write criticism from Richie Forrester, or criticism from Alan Sweetman this week, Charlie Brooks, whoever. And also no problem on Twitter, incidentally, from people who are brave enough to post under their own name. Part of the job, I've got no problem with it. I'd never dream of telling them how to write either. But the one thing I can't deal with, Scoop, is lies. Simple.
Well, the facts will bear there.
What a rant. That's been scuttling for a while. Ed, I've got a bit of advice for you. I take on board everything you said there. If you're in good form, it's hilarious, all this. I've told you, this is the best sport going, but it's also the funniest, especially in media coverage. And let me slide out of Ed's monologue with reference to what happened on Monday. I echo absolutely everything Ed said about Royal Ascot. It was one of the most joyous meetings I've ever been to. It was tremendous, intensely competitive on the track, beautiful weather, people having a ball, having a different type of day out wherever you looked on the track and loving it. But then we come to Monday, and this sport has two significant bits of news released, one relating to Kipco, declining to continue a multi-million sponsorship of the Guineas Weekend, the Champions Series, and the Kipco King George, and a story that Radio 4 are stopping having a couple of light-hearted tips delivered to a declining, aging audience. The average Radio 4 listener is about as old as me. The presenters treat it as a punchline. And guess which one got more coverage? Guess which one? The loss of a multi-million-pound sponsorship or the loss of a couple of light-hearted tips on a declining programme for old people? And the media coverage, it's insanely funny. Cornelius Lysett, former BBC guy, says that racing has lost a priceless marketing tool. A priceless marketing tool. Says that racing made his spin doctor and relates to Ed Davey jumping off paddleboards. It's fantastically funny. Dave Watterson, a mate of mine and a colleague of mine, and an LBC listener, by the way, said that he's really saddened as another of my institutions has been torn down. This reaction from people is just insanely funny. If you treat it seriously, you are just not part of the real world. As Ed will testify, racing has 2 dedicated racing channels. How many days terrestrial coverage in a year?
118, I think, 119.
118, more than ever before. And we are getting editorial pieces and people getting the hump about Radio 4 ditching a couple
I tell you what, doesn't get a mention. I would classify myself as more a talk sport listener than a Radio 4. I almost didn't know there were those tips. And we're getting coverage on Talk Sport 2 on a daily basis. No one mentions that.
And free podcasts as well. That's not...
It's not like this every week, Fran, I'm afraid.
It's not. This is unusual, Fran.
We're 13 minutes in.
We normally have to wake him up.
Let's get onto the racing. It was brilliant. It was intense from start to finish. The weather was fantastic. The stories were really good. So many different jockeys and trainers getting a look in, and so much to digest. Over to you, Ben. 11:30.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that, gents. I did enjoy the first 15 minutes of the podcast.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. This is what you're here for. It is a platform to rant sometimes, but now we're going to do a day-by-day review, and we'll start, David, with day one. Obviously, we're going to go chronological, and Rosalien in the St James's Palace Stakes, because he got his revenge on the 2,000 guineas winner, and it was a great race.
It really was, yeah. I mean, there's the slight negative about his obviously notable speech not quite given his running. So, we still don't know for definite who is the perennial miler, but Rosalien definitely raised his game, didn't he, with what he did? And you just had to be impressed with him and Sean Levy as well. We talked beforehand about how that stall one could make life difficult for him, but he gave Rosalien a real balls of steel ride. And I've seen some people suggesting that it was a case of Rosalien getting him out of trouble. But I think sometimes as jockeys, you need to know what your horse is capable of, and then you ride that brave route accordingly. And I think that's what he did with Rosalien. He knew that if he went the brave route, he had the horse with the gears to get him through it. And the speed that he showed in the last 2 or 3 furlongs was really impressive to go and cut down Henry Longfellow. And Ryan Moore, he had a great week, didn't he? 6 winners, and loads of people are going to talk about how many of his others were really good rides, but you won't see many a better ride in defeat than Ryan Moore on Henry Longfellow. He did absolutely everything right to try and beat Rosalien, and just came up against a better horse. And it's just a little bit of a shame. I think Charin is talking about, or connections of Charin are talking about swerving, taking him on in the Sussex. So maybe we need a peak notable speech to turn up there to get a really intriguing race. But what we saw from Rosalien is he's a really good miler and looks the pick of the 3-year-olds all of a sudden.
And Fran, we obviously started the meeting with Sharon in the Queen Anne Stakes, and okay, it probably wasn't a vintage renewal of the race, but he's certainly been an improving 4-year-old throughout the season, and he really seemed to deserve this breakthrough top level success.
Yeah, indeed, Scoop, and he would. Excuse me. He was very good in reversing form with audience as well. Obviously, that Lock-Inch win is obviously, as it looked in the day, a bit of a freak result. But Charian, he's getting better at racing. Wasn't a vintage Group 1 by any means in my book, but the way he goes through a race, the way he travels on fast ground, and it kicked off the week for Roger Varian in good style. But probably this story this summer, at least, going on the radar, maybe somewhat, is Sylvester de Sousa coming back so strong after winning, after suspension, after winning the 1,000 guineas, to win another Group 1 on this horse, and just picking up the pieces when James Doyle is tied up with Whatnot Racing. It's been a remarkable comeback for a man that, was out of the country for 3 or 4 years, 3 years maybe in Hong Kong, out for a year, and to come back in this manner is a testament to his ability and his tenacity. It's good to see. He's a good man.
What do you think about the French jockeys there, Fran? Yes. Johnny Murta put the boot in afterwards.
I backed Factor Cheval. And if I had a betting slip, I would have torn up after 50 yards, wouldn't you? It was just, for the caliber riders that are involved, it was not what you'd expect at all. And whether they just had their own theory on the race, tactics, but poorly planned, poorly played out, and he got no run for your money. And Factor Cheval, it looked a really good setup for him. I thought coming back there fresh after a really good win in Dubai, but as I said, he was out with the washing very quickly.
Well, just to prove that we're not xenophobic on this podcast, it was an Australian mare that kicked our sprinters into touch again, GC, and she was described as, I think she was described as the 10th best sprinter in Australia, but she was too good for ours.
8 to 10, between 8 and 10, but she was a little bit too good for, a good quality field, but not superstars. Regional, ran a belter. Big Evs, likewise, Believing ran pretty well. But there's some people saying, all we do is breed for speed, but we don't have any top sprinters. It's a bit like the English entitled football fans. They find it hard to believe that anyone from around the world can do anything as well as us, let alone better. But Aussies do sprinting pretty much better than anyone around the world. So hats off to her connections. That Henry Dwyer looks the right character. She's going to be back for Goodwood and hopefully York. And it adds a lot of colour to the sprint scene. He's only got about 38, 39 horses. Most of them are dead ordinary. But that is a bold move to bring a filly like that all this way, with a big, big costs involved. But she's paid them back. She's terrific.
And Ed, I've given you time to recover now.
I'm fine, Scoop. I'm fine. I'm very, very laid back here.
What else can we say about day one? I'm contractually obliged to mention Matt Brocklebank's 66-1 winner, Rashabad.
80, wasn't it?
Country Stakes.
And you had the third?
81 SP. Yeah, tremendous tipping from him. Brilliant for Billy Loughnane as well. And we had...
Didn't you tip the third?
For Sir Mark.
Scoop, didn't you tip the third at a big price?
Yes, columnist. Yeah.
What a result for Sporting Life.
Nearly got the trifecta up. The 125,000.
I think day one sort of summed up the week in terms of, if you could order stories, we were so blessed. And if you're Nick Smith and Sir Francis Brooke, if you order winners, you'd want an Australian winner. You would have loved the Sangster winner. And it happened all week. And day one was full of it. The contrast between Sir Mark Prescott and Billy the Kid, an 18-year-old who should have been finishing his A-level exams, really, like most of the country that week. There he was, riding a winner at Royal Ascot. And what I love about him and some others, we'll come to Callum Shepherd later, is they're losing, and he's one of my mates, so I can say it, that McCoy misery that we've had for so many years. They're able to express themselves, show it's fun. They're real characters. You saw what they did to our camera, which AD holds. A lot of them kissing it, punching it, whatever. Billy the Kid did his reveal from it like a singer in Boyzone. And Billy is just a superstar. That smile was magic. But seeing the Sangster colours back in the winners' enclosure was just brilliant. They'd last won the Coventry, or he won the Coventry in 1993, Robert, and his son wears his old top hat with, it's too big for him. And he's got the racing post from the days of those winners, I think, for his dad, is the lining of his top hat to make it a bit smaller. Magic, magic, magic. And the day rolled on like that. And the Australian winner, great for the meeting. Hopefully others will get a taste for it. And as you say, Sir Mark Prescott was that interview he did. And fair play to Chapman. He did some great interviews during the week. And thank you for your kind words about that, GC, and your Sporting Life wrap up. And Sir Mark was on brilliant form. It was just, it was a lovely day one. The meeting got a lot better. It got a lot better from there. But day one was full of feel good stories.
Pro tip for that bloke with the top hat that's too big, bit of kitchen roll in the headband.
Yeah.
That makes it fit. And we should mention DJ was very sweet on Isra. Not exactly 66-1, but he was very sweet on it, and he bolted up in the Wolfie Wolverton.
Just a quick point on the Coventry and the King Charles III. I think how important both those two races were to what we got for the rest of the week in terms of how fair the track was. What those results showed quite early on was that you didn't need to be drawn high on that straight course. And obviously, the Coventry was won from that side of the track. And even though, that was where the first two in the King Charles III Stakes ended up as well. So I think that was really important for showing that, much like, the Going Stick suggested, the track was perfectly fair all week, and that as long as you rode to your draw, you had a chance. And like I said, I think that was crucial to everybody as the week went on, sort of riding to the draws, and everybody that was betting there, they felt wherever they were drawn, whether it was stall 1 or 31, they were going to have a fair crack of the whip.
Yeah, very good point, David. It did seem a fair track all week. Moving on to day two then, gents. And Fran, we're going to come to you first because it was the Prince of Wales' Stakes, and it was Willie or won't he be on a good day for August Redan, and he certainly was on another good day again.
He really was an encouraging run back in the Tarasol's Gold Cup behind White Birch, where we 90 minutes of rain pre-race. We probably swung things in White Birch's favour, but it was a step back for Augusta Rodin. But this really was his moment of truth, I thought, for this year. Fast ground, 10 furlongs, a likely strong gallop, and he was very, very good. He behaved well in the preliminaries. I think the key to Augusta Rodin is when he looks on song in the ring, he runs on song. He's really a horse that you got to see on the day and see how he looks. And he was the same to me in the parade ring as he was when he won the Irish Champion Stakes last year. He was really well himself and primed, and he battled. He was thrown out a strong challenge by the eventual second. That stamina that he showed when he won the Derby last year, coming to the fore. He's never going to win by far, Scoop, but it was a good performance, and it'd be interesting to see where he goes for the rest of the year, what way to play it with him. He's won his Group 1 at 10 furlongs. Maybe we'll get to trust him more, but I met one of the Coolmore main men Wednesday before racing, and I said, well, what's the story, or what's the banker of the week? Augusta Rodin, have what you like on him. I couldn't face it. More fool me.
No, well, he's that type of horse, isn't he? You never know when he's going to bomb out.
Can I make a couple of quick points on that race? Some people don't like pacemakers. You get 2 pacemakers in like that, it doesn't half make for an exciting race. It really does. And I want to put it in a good word, a horse who hasn't got any love in the wash-up. Royal Rhyme for Carl Burke, I thought, ran a terrific race. He was beaten 4 lengths, but he was attending that searching pace right from the start. And I just think he's a good horse now. And that Sky Bet Stakes at York on King George weekend, the Group 2, that looks a race that he could be very, very competitive in, I think.
And he could be better with a bit of cut in the ground, I think.
So. I just think he's a good horse now, Ben.
Yeah.
Prove it before too long.
Absolutely.
Would the owner of Blue Rose Sen and Big Rock be regretting his change of stable?
Oh, what a disaster! I mean, it's I have no words.
It's not gone well.
Fran, if you're riding Augusta Rodin, it's really interesting what you say about the paddock there. For me, the 2 things for him are rattling fast ground, but also waking him up in a race. Do you remember what happened in the King George? Ryan held him up, and it looked like he sulked a bit. Now, if you're riding him, Fran, do you have to keep him interested and keep him alert early? Would that be fair?
I think so, and he started slowly in Tarasol's Gold Cup, and Ryan was very keen to rouse him along early to get him into top position or top gear, if you like. And I think if you drop it with him, Ed, he drops everything. Perhaps maybe that's a factor in it. And being aggressive off a strong gallop with fast ground definitely plays to his strengths. And maybe he's just a horse that needs plenty of stoking up to get into top gear. I agree with that. And just for people at home, whether it's an ITV or racing TV, just keep an eye on him in the preliminaries. I think that's key to him. What you see in the day is what you're likely to get in the race.
Fran, it's a long way off, but do you think Coolmore, Ballydoyle will have more than half an eye on the Japan Cup for either him or Continuous at the back end?
I'd like to think so. I think with the breeding of the 2 of them, Augusta Rodin, he's won a Breeders' Cup turf. He's obviously bombed out in Dubai, but he's won a Champions Stakes. Likely to get a Japanese run in the Irish Champions Stakes this year. Shin Emperor, who was 3rd in the Japanese Derby, his connections are over next week to do an inspection of the Curragh. He's likely to come. And were they to meet a 3-year-old Japanese horse against a 4-year-old Augusta Rodin, it could tee things nicely up for a Japan Cup trip. And with Coolmore being top heavy on similar type of horses, getting a good run or a big run in Japan, or even winning a Japan Cup, would be a huge move for them.
Considering all the flops
Sorry, David.
No, I was just going to say, considering all the flops that he's had that people continue to make quite a big thing of, he's not put together a bad CV, has he? The Derby, the Irish Derby, Irish Champion, Breeders' Cup Turf, and now a Prince of Wales. And particularly, his time form rating is only 127, so it's not like he's a world beater as such. But when he does turn up, he gets the job done usually, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think the big plus last week was that 2 Frenchies came screaming through the pack, and he put his head down really hard and he ran dead straight to the line, didn't he?
Absolutely, David. That was the only Group 1 on day 2, but there was 3 Group 2s to choose from to discuss. I thought Running Lion did well to bounce back in the Duke of Cambridge Stakes under Oisin Murphy.
Yeah, I think the big story about that race, as much as anything, I think, was Murphy's ride on her, wasn't it? a difficult draw from stall 11, but really took the bull by the horns and was positive, went forward and ended up having a really good position compared to Laurel, who was finishing second. And I mean, she's been a little bit in and out, hasn't she, Running Lion? Remember how good she started a 3-year-old career, and then it went wrong, didn't it? She was withdrawn at the start of the Oaks. She flopped in the Diane, and I think the win on Wednesday was actually her first success since she'd won the Pretty Polly early on as a 3-year-old. So she's very much back on track now, and you get the feeling that it's not a great crop of milers amongst the fillies at the moment. They're going to turn up and beat each other, and she's as entitled, I think, as any to be a leading player for the Matron at the end of the season, and probably even the Group 1 at the July course as well in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
And Ed, we had some other big stories on day 2. Wild Tiger for Saeed in the Royal Hunt Cup, and of course, Wathan striking for the first time in the week with Leovani.
Heartbreak for Berry and Chamberlain, though. We took on Illinois with Highbury and got it wrong. We thought Ryan, you've got it wrong. Ryan doesn't get it wrong. We got that one wrong, didn't we, Fran? But never mind.
We did. In our defence, we tipped it a week out from the jockey bookings, but tough watch, yeah.
Yeah, nice to see Saeed bin Surat winning at Ascot for the umpteenth time. When you look back at his record, it's been a while, but his record at Royal Ascot back in the day is unbelievable. Wathnan, again, would be on the Ascot wish list and is good for the sport, really, with the investment they're putting into the sport. Carl Burke, I mean, honestly, Carl Burke had a brilliant week, yet they will look back at a couple that got away. How good must this Andesite be? Because going into the week, that was the 2-year-old they earmarked as their best, and he kicked out in his stable, very unlucky. And hopefully he'll be okay, because he could be very, very good. They were very confident ahead of the Coventry with him. But what a good trainer, what good communicator Carl Burke is as well. So again, that was excellent. It was a good day, and fair play to Oisin Murphy. He took a big risk, didn't he, with Running Lion? When you remember what happened at Newmarket first up this year, I thought Oisin rode brilliantly all week. And one thing I really liked about Oisin, and I know you interview him brilliantly, Scoop, so you'll be able to pass this on. He interacts with the public. He interacts with the public in the paddock, and most importantly, down at the start. He'll take a horse ahead of a big race to see a bunch of kids at the start and chat to them merrily. No one else will see it. I can see it on one of my monitors. That from jockeys, like I talked about with Billy Knocknane and his smile and his character. That's so good. That's the equivalent of Harry Kane going off to have a little chat with someone in Gelsenkirchen or Cologne just before kickoff. Brilliant, brilliant. You never used to do that, Fran, you miserable so-and-so.
It's all about eating now, hey. Well, sorry, Scoop. No, just on trainers that we're talking about, jockeys, just that Queen Mary result, Mighty Eru, the eventual second home, just beat Gavin Cromwell's won 2 Queen Marys in the previous couple of years, Snellen and Quick Susie winning. He went within a neck or half a length of doing it again, doing it again this year. He had my mate Mozzie the day before, ran a cracker in the final race of the day as well. 2 runners at Royal Ascot, both in the finishing positions. Remarkable trainer. No, Willie Buns finished off the last race with an older horse, but Gavin, Cheltenham, Ascot 2-year-olds, doesn't matter. He's definitely a trainer to take note of, and a remarkable strike rate at the Royal Meeting.
Absolutely. Well said, Fran. Well, Ed just alluded to it. I have caught up with Oisin Murphy to talk all things Royal Ascot 2024 after a tremendous week for him. So here it is. Yes, indeed. We are joined by Oisin Murphy, who had a tremendous week at Royal Ascot last week. 4 winners, Oisin. It was a good one.
Thank God, Ben. I was very grateful to the fantastic horses I rode, and obviously their connections for preparing them so well.
Absolutely. Let's just go through them, because Asfura was excellent in the King Charles III on the first day.
Yeah, she was a push-button ride. She behaved very well, and she travelled supremely well behind regional. And once I got going on her, she showed a good turn of foot, and she was well on top of the line. I really enjoyed riding her, Ben. She's very powerful. You know, she carries a lot of condition. She's a very mature racehorse. So it was great, and good reward for her connections to bring her from Australia.
Yeah, obviously we're well used to seeing Australians win that race. Does she feel like a more powerful horse than a lot of our sprinters?
Yeah, I'd imagine she's a lot heavier. She's got much more bone, so her actual legs are a lot thicker than most horses you'd ride. And yeah, I mean she has that burst of speed, that almost like a sprint runner. She's that bigger type that can really let down, you know.
And then going on to the Duke of Cambridge Stakes, Running Lion, tremendous ride on the round course.
Very kind, but obviously I owed everyone to all her followers, her owner David Howden, the Gosden stable, and all the punters who backed her the last twice, to get it right this time. And I tried very hard. Unfortunately, the freshness is now out of her. She relaxed really well for me, and you know, once I was able to get a breather in before the turn, she was a horse that was full of running. Before I gave her the giddy up as we straightened, and she was going to take a bit of catching.
Was it one of those races where on paper beforehand you thought, look, well, there might not be much pace here. Let's get a prominent.
Yeah, absolutely it was, Ben. I was thinking there's no natural front runner in the race, and there might be a few guys thinking the same thing as me. But if I was able to go forward and not use up too much petrol from a wide draw, then it was going to be the right thing to do.
And then Wild Tiger in the Royal Hunt Cup for Syed Bin Sarah, who you've been, associated with for many years.
Yes, he gave me my first winner at Royal Ascot in 2017, and this was one I really got enjoyment out of. He's a very clever horse. He doesn't waste any energy. He's always behind the bridle, and then when you ask him a question, he finds for you. Very, very genuine. We spoke before. Obviously, we thought he was a group horse in a handicap, and thankfully, it turned out to be the case. I mean, I couldn't pull him up after the race. He doesn't really want the ground that fast, but he's so genuine. And yeah, thanks to Saeed for going that direction with him to the Royal Hunt Cup and allowing me to keep the ride.
Yeah, I mean, he's rated 103 now. How high do you think he can go? Because like you say, he's just a horse that seems to find the more you ask him.
Yeah, he has a German pedigree, and those horses tend to improve with age. He probably fits into that category. Now, hopefully, he can stay in one piece because, I'd hope he can make his mark at listed level, and then who knows after that. But that's the sort of horse he is at the moment.
And then you ended the week with Cardham in the QE2 Jubilee Stakes, a really patient ride on the straight course.
Yeah, I just copied Jamie Spencer from 12 months ago. I broke better than the horse probably normally comes out. And I found he was a bit keen for a few strides. But when I diverted course and shifted a little bit right where he had cover, he relaxed very well. And I didn't rush up to the back of the field. I just allowed him gradually creep up to the back of him. And thankfully, they all slowed down and he kept going.
Plenty of satisfying rides for you in there, but what was the most satisfying ride for you of the week?
Maybe Wild Tiger. It was a bold plan when he won a 7 furlong handicap at Goodwood, not beating superstars, to say he's a Royal Hunt Cup horse and he's the one I want to ride, and for it all to work out then in a 30 runner race was great.
You had a few near misses as well. What was the one horse from the week that was beaten that you'd really look forward to riding next time?
Well, Cassia, I was taking back from halfway. I told Andrew and the Judmont team in the paddock that I wanted to follow Gavin Ryan on the favourite and maybe the American horse, and I got stuck behind them. They both slowed down at the same time, and there was a horse on my left and my right, and it turned into a nightmare position. And I'm sorry for anyone who was, on Cassia, and obviously the team at home, because it takes a lot of preparing these horses, and then for the jockey to run into traffic for the majority of a 1,000-meter race, it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, but want to keep the faith with the Cassia.
Yeah, I hope so, Ben. I mean, we didn't learn anything about her at Ascot other than she took the whole day very well. and that she didn't have a hard race. But, you know, we didn't learn how much was really in the tank. And there was a lot of late money for her. I think she went from like 12-1 into 7-2. So I think people were quite impressed by what she did at Nottingham.
And what about Kikuli? Because he ran into a Group 1 horse, really, didn't he, in the Jersey Stakes, but ran a really good race.
Yeah, he did. Listen, it was the first time I followed Hartem the whole way, but it was the first time he got crowded. There was horses around him, which probably lit him up a little bit. But you know, I travelled as well as anything in the race, and I actually thought at the line I might have won, but unfortunately the photo didn't go our way. He's a good horse, and I'm privileged that I got to ride a half brother to Frankel, and hopefully if Ryan isn't available on his next start, hopefully I'll be considered to ride him again.
Great stuff. Great week at Royal Ascot. We'll finish Oisin with the Curragh this weekend because you're flying over for the Dubai duty-free Irish Derby, and Sunway for David Minussier, who you were on in the Prix du Jockey Club, and we know what happened at the start there. But you said coming out of that he's one to look forward to over 1.5 miles, and here we are on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's likely going to be a small field, 7 or 8 runners. You'd hope that the pace is on because Los Angeles looks like a horse that stays well, and there'll be a few Ballydoyle horses, hopefully in there to ensure it's a normal gallop. You have to have a huge amount of respect for the Fanshawe horse. Thought he ran very well in the Derby. But Sunway is bounced out of France in great shape, and I rode him yesterday. All the signs are positive. So, listen, if there's 8 runners, I definitely wouldn't be putting off your listeners to having some money on Sunway each way.
And obviously, a lot of his form's on softer ground. Do you think he's the type of horse that can go well on better ground?
Yeah, I think good to firm is fine for him. Yeah, I think he's very much at home on all surfaces. Incredibly athletic, good-bodied horse. Yeah.
It's a fantastic race. Obviously, you're on Sunway, but do you think there's any way that there's a scenario where we could see the Derby form turned around at the top of the market?
Yeah, I think Sunway can give them something to think about. Yeah, I think he's a different horse to what he was earlier in the year, and yeah, I'd be very hopeful he'll run a career best anyway. You know, he probably ran to 112 on his final 2-year-old run. A few pounds better than that will put him in the mix.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot as always, Oisin. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks very much, Ben.
But it brings us nicely on to day 3 at Royal Ascot, and we have to start, of course, with the Ascot Gold Cup GC, and a tremendous training performance really from Aidan O'Brien to get Kyprios back in the winning groove in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I'd been umming and ahhing about the Gold Cup for a while. By the time Thursday came around, I was pro Kyprios just because of the way Aidan was getting his A-team to peak. Henry Longfellow didn't win on day 1, but he absolutely peaked. Gus on day 2, and then Kyprios on day 3. And it all sets up really nicely for what I think will be round 3 between Trawlerman and Kyprios at Goodwood, because Trawlerman beat him in October. Kyprios took his revenge the other day, and there's not a massive amount between the two. So it looks like we've got a nice little narrative for the stayers with those two banking heads again. But no, he's an admirable horse, and he's one of those when you get the feeling when it gets really tough, it's going to be mighty hard to beat him. Trawlerman did it last October under an inspired Dettori ride, but Kyprios is back and back pretty much as good as ever, I think.
Thank God Billy's not here today, because I took him on.
Kyprios.
And two questions to you, Fran. One, I thought after what happened on Champions Day, Ryan might hit the front at the absolute last second. He didn't, which I'd like you to explain. And 2, brilliant bit of training, yes. But how brave is this horse to come back from what I understand to have been a life-threatening injury?
Look, he's a remarkable horse in his own way. You got to go back to his Queen's Vase where he was withdrawn at the start, wasn't he? He played up in the gates, and he's just got better and better with age. He obviously had his quirks. I remember Shamie Heffernan winning on him in Cork. I think it was 1.25 miles one day, and he pushed him from the start to finish. I think he got a lengthy whip ban, and that's been his trade throughout. He's just tough. He grinds away, and since getting extreme distances. He's just got better and better. That win 2 years ago was very, very good. But to come back from what his injury was and get back at the back end of last season, he didn't ride out for 100 odd days, I think it was last year. And to get back and run a cracker and Ledger, just get beaten British Champions Day, where he may well have tired on that occasion, maybe idled, and maybe it was written in the stars that Frankie would have a good day on that occasion. But to get him back to his peak, the vintage crop, Savile Beg, and then back to Ascot, great performance, and I think it's just testament to breeding Ed. You know, he's Galileo out of a great Meidler stud family, a great mare. His full sister, of course, won the Irish Ledger, having pulled her way to the front, Search for a Song under Chris Hayes. Clearly talented, but Ryan, it's a balancing act between him. You got to commit him and you got to get him going. But I was a little bit worried. 2 years ago, there was a different whip rule in place to what there was this time. You're a couple of strokes less, so he's had to time it. But as we've seen in the past, never doubted Ryan, and I think the best is probably yet to come from this horse. I do think he's really on the way back.
A good day for Kyprios and Ramar and Ed and O'Brien. DJ, it was a good day for the North as well, with Mickley winning for Ed Bethel and Shareholder for Carl Burke.
Yeah, Carl Burke's 2-year-olds, we've already spoken about them, and Shareholder took a real big step forward from what he did when he won the Brian Yardley. Obviously, he won that on his debut, only had to run to a rating in the low 80s to win that in receipt of weight from the runner-up like he was there. And Mickley, you know, what can you say about that? It was a really impressive performance by Ed Bethel's horse, who had changed hands privately, I think, after he'd won so impressively at Doncaster. I heard on a different podcast that apparently it fetched, they had to pay about 400,000 for him. And, you know, they've got a Royal Ascot winner. They'll be delighted with that, won't they? Definitely. And just the way he went through the race, travelled super smoothly, and it's one of those that if you've got anything on him, you're watching it and you're always thinking you've got a chance, and he went and did the business nicely. The first two pulling clear.
Ed Bethel sent three. Fran touched on Gavin Cromwell, rightly so. Ed Bethel sent 3 horses to Royal Ascot. Elim ran a belter in the Sandringham for 6th. Regional ran a screamer, best of British, 2nd in the King Charles III. And Mickley won the Britannia handicap. So from 3 horses, he had a winner, a 2nd in a Group 1 and a 6th. And the really impressive thing, the 3 horses added together, lads, cost 45 grand. The 3 of them together.
Wow.
That's some feat, isn't it?
It was a great week for young trainers when you think about it. Harry Eustace went very close. Bowie had a winner. George Scott will come to, had a brilliant winner, and Harry Chelton likewise. Good week for the young trainers. And Aidan, with all those horses you tipped, Fran, and he did do extremely well, but he didn't overshadow it. Even with 6 winners, it didn't feel like dominance like we had with Mullins at Cheltenham.
We won't mention King's Gambit then, will we? A lot of people went out in that one.
King's Gambit, yeah, you were very sweet on him, Ed, weren't you? And obviously Brian Meehan, great week. He just,
in the words of Gigi, I love Gigi's commentary. In the words of Gigi, that's a very good horse. Just wasn't his day. I mean, his 3 horses. The horse that he also had touched off, Kakuli, whatever it was called, for Harry Charlton, King's Gambit, and that brilliant winner, Hand of God. I mean, those 3 are good. Very good. Sorry, Scoot, we've lost the running order here. You're going to have to pull this back.
No, day 3's wrapped up now. I think it was all about Kyprios, really. And we've touched on the undercard on day 3. So let's move on to Friday and a Coronation Stakes GC. What did you make of this one?
Well, I think it was quite straightforward in a way, in that probably most of us were guilty of looking for an improver to beat Porta Fortuna, but sometimes that consistency and reliability is enough. And I don't think she had to improve massively, but she did improve a little bit. And that uncomplicated style and willingness to battle stood her in great stead. Again, Ramatwell ran really well. But Porta Fortuna, I think, was the best filly on the day. And when you think back that she won the Albany, she ran really well in the Shively Park in defeat. She ran really well at the Breeders' Cup. She ran a blinder in the 3-way going the 1,000, and she's still holding her form. So salute to Donnacha O'Brien there. He's got that filly to peak at numerous big occasions over the last 12 months.
What did you make of it, David? Obviously, we get to see the 1,000 Guineas runners again. It brings together a few different strands of form. Has it cleared up the pecking order in this division?
I think to a certain extent with Ramatui, I was one of those that thought she'd reverse the form, and she was well backed to do so. And I think in hindsight, you sort of need to row back a little bit in the criticism that the jockey got. Obviously, was ridden a bit more patiently here, and she's still been beaten really on merit, hasn't she? And you know, I think one of the things that I perhaps have been guilty at, sort of taking into account the results at this meeting compared to my view going into the races, in terms of how much of a test still the round course is. And I probably underestimated that this was still going to be a test of stamina for her. And it was certainly the case in the Prince of Wales with in Spiral, that you know, she probably did fail for stamina in that race as well. So I think Ramatuelle, she just doesn't quite see out the mile well enough in this company to be able to win a Group 1, I don't think.
And on also on Friday, Fran, it was the Commonwealth Cup, and really excellent performance from Inisherin, who's come such a long way in a short space of time, hasn't he, since he was beaten in the 2,000 Guineas.
Yeah, and a big week for Kevin Ryan as well, wasn't it? Inisherin obviously started off in the Guineas, very, very good in Haydock, and it's great to see that the likes of Sheikh Mohammed Obeid are spreading their horse out more than is the norm with the Arab owners. At least it's becoming more of a fashion to have a horse trained in the north, and Kevin Ryan and Carol Burke are reaping that as well. I suppose Sheikh Obeid has fallen out with everyone in Newmarket at this stage, perhaps as well. But it's good to see, and it was great to see Tom Eves, you know, keep the ride and striking this horse. He's very straightforward push button, but he's getting better and better. He's by Chamberlin. Ajman Princess Stam was very, very decent mare as well, and she won at Goodwood under me, so she must have been very good when she did win this race in Goodwood under me. But it was really good to see, and I think just feature of the week is having that northern element to it as well. If you take out the big Newmarket yards, when the northern trainers are getting the big owners, I think the likes of Inisherin and what Carl Burke did, and our own Richard Fye as well had a week of knocking on the door, horse running well, so that was good to see. But it wasn't much strength and depth to the Commonwealth, maybe not, but he's in a different league to the rest of them.
The Sheikh who must be Obeid's a tremendous character, isn't he? He said on record that he's saving $1 million a year by moving all those horses out of Newmarket in training costs, and for all that he's a mercurial character, military man, as we know. For him to stand in the winner's enclosure after the Commonwealth Cup and say straight away in mid-June, Rosalia and Inisherin will not be going to stud. They'll both be back as 4-year-olds. Not many high-profile owners would be so punchy so early in the season with two crackerjack horses like that.
I was really impressed with Inisherin in terms of the way that he did this. When you consider he faced quite a different set of circumstances to what had seemed to suit him so well, I just think what he did, it was really impressive, given that the rest of the horses that finished in the frame ended up coming from much further back than he did. And I think it's very much a case of all systems go for the July Cup, and hopeful that he can be the dominant 6 furlong performer that we haven't seen for quite a while.
Fran and everyone, does anyone think that Bucanero Fuerte and or Elite Status would have given him a shake had they been able to run? Because they both came out on the day or the day before, didn't they?
No, not for me. I think Buccaneer Forte's form ties in very strongly with Give Me the Beat Boys, for all that he had a penalty in Naas. Give Me the Beat Boys probably didn't show up, but no, I think this was a really dominant display.
And GC, what do you reckon to this Calandagan, who absolutely hosed up, didn't he, in the King Edward VII?
Took me by surprise. Truly run race, absolutely bolted up. A classic example of, I'm guilty of this. French horse, all his forms on softish ground, testing ground, to question mark. Some of them just relish it. He did. Test of stamina, fast ground, whizzed in. Can't run the arc, but has to be high on the short list for some good races after this. It was a really, really impressive performance by him. Have we mentioned English Oak yet? Because if we mention Inisherin, I think he might come up against English Oak in the July Cup. And I think Inisherin is low 122p, is he? And English Oak is about 119. That dominant handicap performance suggests he's going to be up in class before too long.
Yeah, he certainly looks to have the gears to step back in trip, doesn't he, English Oak? Obviously won over 7 furlongs at Royal Ascot. What else from day 4? I've got on Dave's running order, Fairy Godmother, the most exciting 2-year-old of the season for 24 hours.
Great to see a little cameo from Dave just now.
Yeah, if anyone heard that, his volume might be back, but he has been silenced for the whole podcast. But
No wonder some of us lost our train of thought.
exactly.
Get the editor on that bit.
Fairy Godmother in the Albany Stakes. Fran, what did you reckon?
It was quite remarkable what she did. Obviously, when she got beaten in debut in Ace, I think connections were a little bit taken aback. But in the ring, pre-racing Ace, she didn't look as ready as the winner was, and she duly reversed form with the winner. And what she did on Friday's scoop was very, very taking. Visually, at least, time will tell how good the race was. But it's like being in the fast lane of a motorway and having to ease right down, come back down around an articulated truck and whiz down the slow lane all in the space of 200 meters and go away and win. So it was pretty remarkable, and I'd say she's hugely exciting. Obviously, she's by Blue Point, and as you said, for 24 hours, she looked to be the best 2-year-old filly in training, maybe the best 2-year-old that we've seen in training in some respects, but that changed on Saturday. But wherever she goes, what trip to keep her at in the future will be highly interesting, but very, very impressive.
Is there any chance that Bedtime Story and Fairy Godmother will both run in the Moyglen? Any chance?
No, I'd say
Aiden
not.
runs his fillies against each other, Fran.
Yeah, not under this good though.
Okay.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked when they looked that good. When they looked that good, I would be highly surprised. But maybe who knows? You know. But I'm sure they can find another option for one of them at least.
Well, we'll start Saturday with
Oh,
Bedtime.
no, whoa! I'm not finished on Friday, Scoop.
Are we not? What have we got?
Friday for me. I'm going to make a big statement in a minute, but I need DJ's help before I do that, because one of my eye catches of the week was second to the French horse in the 1.5 race in the Wathnan colours for Haggis, and I can't remember what name it is.
Space Legend.
Space Legend, that's right. Space Legend. Next time. This is a big statement, Scoop, and it might be bias of recency, but I don't think I've enjoyed a broadcast as much as Friday since potentially Aguero scored his goal in. What year was that, GC? 2012?
I'm hopeless on those, but it was a great goal.
This day, honestly, Friday at Ascot, if that doesn't sell the sport, I don't know what will. It was unbelievable from start to finish. With Fairy Godmother, a well-backed favourite. For people watching at home, they all went, wow. The noise on the track when Ryan switched her and she started to fly, it was deafening. It was brilliant. What a performance. And I'm not sure I agree with you, Fran. We might do a vote when we talk about Bedtime Story moving forward. But you add to that Porto Fortuna, American owners meeting the king. I mean, if that doesn't sell Ascot to that part of the world, what will? You had father and son day. You had father beating son in the Coronation Stakes. You had Colin Keane riding a winner for his dad. I mean, that was unbelievable. And those owners, I mean, an 84-year-old singing King of the Road in the winner's enclosure at Ascot. I mean, this is for ITV, this is heaven. And then Harry Herbert stepped up to the plate and sang after soprano. I mean, I was just pinching myself with what was happening and the fun all round the track. Harvey and Mr. Brightside was an obvious highlight, and that's got more, whatever you do these days, got clicks or whatever than any other clip from Royal Ascot. The performances on and off the track, honestly, it was special. And for the Barons to finish it, father and daughter, honestly, I loved Friday more than any other day I've broadcast. Just in terms of fun and everything that's going on, I enjoyed it more than any other day I've done on a racecourse since I've done this job. It was just magic. It was bananas. It was a bit bonkers, but I absolutely loved it. And I sense that, more importantly, people who were there and people at home didn't think dissimilar.
It's no wonder that you didn't need to get the Scotch eggs out of the fridge that day.
Well, that wound a few people out. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that.
You get involved in the singing, Ed?
At the end, we got involved in the singing because 6:15. It's too late to get to the bandstand because the music, he can't, the bandmaster who had Oh When the Saints lined up for 3 of the 5 days, would you believe, for me? You can't start the music until the last horse has left the paddock after the last race. And it was later this year, and we couldn't do it until we extended the show specifically for Sweet Caroline on Saturday. But again, it's great fun, and hopefully people sing along at home. And I showed the contrast to when we did it in COVID, which is the most challenging broadcasting I've ever done in my life. And we finished with the Killers and Pixie Lott at home singing to an empty bandstand. How miserable was that? to the joy of last week. That's why I think I probably enjoy it so much. And Friday will be a day I'll remember for a very long time.
They need a rejig on the songs for the bandstand, no, Ed. Hardly anyone there knows the words to Pack Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag and Speed Bonnie Boat.
A few of them have been ruled out. There's no longer Delilah's gone.
That's it.
Delilah's the words. You can't sing that in public. And one of the patriotic ones from last night at the proms is gone.
Of course, I see what you mean about Delilah now. I felt
Sleepy Jean's my favourite. I stay for I When the Saints. I When the Saints and Sleepy Jean. They're belters, absolute belters.
Well, we have made it to the final day of Royal Ascot in our review. And Fran, we best kick off with the Frankel Filly bedtime story. It was just amazing.
Yeah, David will know more and Gren will know more about the form, but when she won in debut at Leopardstown, she looked very, very promising the way she won under Wayne Lorden, but did not see anything like the performance that was going to come on Saturday in that Chesham Stakes. It was highly visually just mind-blowing, wasn't it? The way she just kept lengthening and even by the winning line, the way she went around the bend with Ryan, she just was going further and further, and time will tell how good it was, but at this point in time it's very reminiscent of what her sire did on a couple of occasions up the straight in Ascot. And it's an exciting time for Team Ballydoyle. They've good fillies, good 2-year-old fillies, but they struggle a bit on the Colts front this week. Camille Pissarro, who was surprisingly well backed early in the week, didn't think he was up to the level myself, but Whistle Jacket, maybe he got beaten for pace over 5 furlongs, but they've got 2 high-class fillies, but they need a call to come out. I'm sure it will when the 7 furlong mile types get going, but you wouldn't swap the 2 that pitched up in Bedtime Story. That will live long in the memory, that result.
I think she was the widest margin. In fact, she broke the record for the widest margin of a 2-year-old at Ascot, which I think had been held in the modern era by Three Valleys. He won the Coventry Stakes 20 something years ago by 8 lengths. And it should be noted that he didn't win another race for more than 2 years when he'd been shipped off to America. But it was a pretty staggering performance. And when you think she's by Frankel out of Mecca's Angel, it sort of adds to the excitement, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of time form rating, we've gone really high on it. She's 116p, which is a huge level for a 7 furlong 2-year-old in particular.
What's Fairy Godmother, DJ?
She's 112p, which, again, if you hadn't had what Bedtime Story did the day after, you'd be saying that was a really high rating for a 2-year-old filly at this stage. And it is a rare thing for the 2 fillies to have come out of Royal Ascot and those to lead the ratings rather than, say, a Coventry winner or a Norfolk winner. So I think they do look to very much above average performers at this stage. And the real interesting thing for me will be to see how much Bedtime Story maintains this level or whether she can improve. Obviously, with it being 7 furlongs, there's quite a bit of weight for age built into that rating, and she just might be a really precocious sort. She's obviously out of Mecca's Angel, who she wasn't precocious as such herself. She was obviously at her best at 4 and 5 and 6 perhaps, but obviously had lots of speed, and we all know what Frankel did at 4 compared to 3 and 2. So loads to look forward to with both of those. And I think the most interesting thing is, like we said, it'd be what would happen if they actually met, but it looks unlikely at this stage.
Should we do a Sporting Life vote then? This will be more for YouTube viewers rather than listeners. They will give the result at the end.
Put it on the poll, Ed. You're right.
What poll should we do, GC? Who'll be higher rated at the end of the season, or between the two?
Who would win if they met in the Moyglare?
Okay, who would win if they met in the Moyglare? Put your hand up, and I don't know whether Dave Ord in his wherever he's been hijacked can hear us, if he can vote as well. Put your hand up if you think it's going to be Fairy Godmother.
Dave's putting a $5 in the swear box. No, I'm going for Bedtime Story.
So there's two of the 5.
2 for Godmother.
And Ed Chamberlain have gone for Fairy Godmother, and the 3 of you go Bedtime Story.
Yeah,
in a Chesham that to me looked banging. It did look a great race to me.
Well, the thing is with the Chesham, Chesham, sorry, because of the conditions, and you've got to be by a sire that won over 10 furlongs. It could be that she beat a lot of slow horses. Obviously, being out of Mecca's
She ran very fast to do it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that, but it is just something to bear in mind, isn't it?
Remember the vote. Note the poll. note the poll scoop for later in the year.
Noted. Poll noted. Right then, Saturday
the last filly that Aidan, the only filly that Aidan won the Cheshire with was Maybe. She won her next 3 starts, didn't win as a 3-year-old. So just a word of caution.
She was top-rated European filly, wasn't she, as a 2-year-old?
Yeah, I suppose the flip side of that is she bred the likes of Saxon Warrior, etc. So the future, the breeding shed is probably good, but maybe just something to bear in mind for a 3-year-old campaign.
He won it with September as well, didn't he?
Did she win? Yeah.
Yeah, she won the Guinea. Yeah.
The Saturday feature was the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes over the 6 furlongs, and we used to see in Jamie Spencer masterclasses on the Ascot Straight Course in the Fitri Hay Silks, but this time it was Oisin Murphy on Cardham who won the race 2 years running. What did you think, GC?
Well, first of all, Murphy did what Spencer did, just incredibly patient, stalk, and pounce. Secondly, I'm not sure how much of a note this got. I think it makes him, along with Yates, the oldest horse to win an Ascot Group 1 in donkey's years. Now, to win a Gold Cup at 8, yes, you can get that, but to be winning a Group 1 sprint at 8 years of age is something very unusual. He's an unusual horse. He clearly just reserves his very best for fast run races on top of the ground at a Royal Ascot, not just Ascot nowadays, but no question that with Spencer jumping off to get on board Mitbahi, Murphy was the perfect man, and spectacular scenes with the Hills clan afterwards, Ed.
Oh, that was fun. What a little star he is. I mean, he was so overcome by it all, young Eddie. And he's an absolute encyclopedia, GC. He makes your form book study sound...
Oh, difficult.
I've got the stat for you. Just bear with me on 8-year-olds. On 8-year-olds, because he became third to win a Group 1 as an 8-year-old after Yates in 2009 and Welsh Rake did it in 1963, and the first to do back-to-back in that race since Right Boy, which would have been, what, late 50s. So yeah. Some achievement. And as you say, Eddie Hills, again, I mean, if you didn't love him at home, nice kid. And
Ed, there's some other great stories on Saturday as well. I mean,
Callum Shepherd.
Callum Shepherd's celebration on Isle of Jura was surely the celebration of the week.
Celebration of the week, probably the interview of the week as well.
Yeah.
And it was very noticeable, the weighing room reception to it. We had Hayley Turner working on the show with us, and she was almost in floods of tears. He's a very popular young man, and that people felt very, very sorry for him when he lost the ride in the Derby. And it was just lovely to hear him and see him open up like he did and what it meant to him. What a I don't know Callum Shepherd at all, but he comes across as a top bloke. Yeah. And just a lovely story with George Scott as well, and everything that it meant to him and his team and his kids, how proud they'll be of dad and la-di-da. I just hope, my hope moving forward is more of these races, people come out afterwards and say that King George is the aim. I'm so bored of hearing, the Ark's not till October and some of these races aren't forever. The King George is our summer highlight. And hopefully George Scott will aim at that and we can have a proper smash up at Ascot in the King George. But full marks to trainer, but in particular, Callum Shepherd will have won a lot of friends after that interview. I enjoyed that, Fran.
So much, Ed. Resonated so much because most jockeys, a lot of people in racing are brought up in a pretty buttoned down culture. Don't give too much away. Don't show too much emotion. And the fact that it all burst out of him, and other things to note about him, he had the stones to say what a lot of people were thinking about the Sunday night racing. A lot of people were thinking, this is garbage. He came out and said, and was very open about it. And there's a culture of bouncing back in that Shepherd family, because his little brother, Laird, who's a very good golfer, was 8 down after 17 in the British Amateur Championship a few years ago, 8 down with 19 holes to play, and came back and won it. So bouncing back from adversity
wow.
is in the blood with the Shepherds. And he's a super likable lad. And that was tremendous to see him openly tearful. I think now Frankie's not here, the door is open for some of those young jockeys. They were always struggling to match his charisma and persona. And I think you'll find that a few of them now step out of that Tory shadow and really... Sean Levy's another one. I find him a very engaging, amusing character. And people like Sean and Callum Shepherd, they've got a big opportunity from here on in.
58 minutes in, the first mention of Frankie. Brilliant.
And last, you'll be glad to hear.
Just a quick point on Isle of Jura. Interesting thing, how he was with Godolphin, wasn't he? He was Charlie Appleby, and I think they spent 150,000 to get hold of him, George Scott. So that looks an inspired purchase.
And that was after one. That was after one poor run, wasn't it, DJ?
Yeah, exactly. Midfield in a Wolverhampton novice on his debut, then sold for 150,000, and handicap debut off 71, where he went off 11-2. What a good thing he must have been that day, and did not look back this year.
And final point on Saturday, GC, Hartem getting the job done in the Jersey Stakes, dropping in trip, dropping in class, but he was good enough to win this.
Yeah, he's a throwback, that horse. He'd had 12 runs running into the Jersey, which is really, really unusual for a winner of that race. He had a penalty. He was back in trip. He's just an incredibly rugged racehorse. I know River Tiber didn't show up with his best effort, nothing like it. But the second is a highly progressive horse, and to give him weight and a beating, excellent. And a really interesting buy from Wathnan, because as these things develop, they were buying horses hoping to shine at Royal Ascot. They got them, but they're now looking at stud potential with the likes of Hartem and with the likes of the 2-year-olds who won, etc. So where that could go in the next few years is absolutely compelling. And the other angle, on the flip side of the coin, the Charlie Appleby no-show. Only half a dozen runners, 2 notable flops, and it beggars belief that a yard of that size and power could only muster half a dozen runners in the entire week. Not even any handicappers of any significance.
That's it. They usually pop up in the handicaps, if nothing else, don't they?
I'm almost certainly overthinking things here, and tell me if I am. I looked at the Appleby contingent and thought, is there any chance that they've looked at this week as a whole and thought, we don't want to be playing second or third fiddle to dem Wathnan boys, so let's just keep our powder dry for Newmarket and York and races in Europe, etc. Or have they just not got that type of horse so early in, well, I say so early in the season, it's the middle of June, for goodness sake.
I'd say probably the latter, because, surely they want to have winners on the biggest stage of the lot. Surely.
It's hard to think of the horses that they could have
I know you mean
in there that would have done particularly well, isn't it? I mean, they've got a bigger string over in America at the moment, haven't they? But they're over in America chasing their grade ones because they've struggled to win a Group 1 over here, I think.
And Devoted Queen was a non-runner, a scratch from the Coronation, wasn't she?
Well, that is Royal Ascot done and dusted for another year, unless anyone's got anything else to say. That's a no. So we'll quickly come to Fran for the Irish Derby this weekend, Fran.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe just backtracking the Royal Ascot team, just on Rosalian and Hatem, what they did in Royal Ascot is a huge advertising for the Irish Guineas, to form that race. Richard Hannon coming to the Curragh. Hopefully that, from an Irish perspective, will encourage more UK trainers to start coming to the likes of the Curragh and Leopardstown. We've lacked that in recent times, and it shows it can be done to win at the Curragh and run well and go on to Royal Ascot. And on that team, 3 likely UK train runners on Sunday in the Irish Derby as well. Ambient Friendly, Rab Haviland's caught up with him last week, and he's hugely excited by keeping the ride in him as well. And obviously you've got Dave Manuzzi's horse Sunway, and a variant horse who's been well talked up. You'll know the form about him more than me, Matsuri. But were the 3 of them to come and take on the Ballydoyle Battalion, it will be hugely interesting. Ambient Friendly, the form of beating Illinois, of course, in the Linfoot Derby trial, looks good now again, and Epsom looked very good, but potentially 6 Aidan O'Brien trained runners in the race. I'd say Rab could have a couple of friends man marking him, but it'll be interesting. That might make the horse settle better, obviously. But Los Angeles is a grinder, and I expect to be a strongly run race. Fascinating, but I do think an English train winner race will be appropriate.
Unless Rab Haviland has a brilliant Curragh record, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't consider giving that ride back to Callum Shepherd. But it won't happen. But the reason for it was Haviland's so-called Epsom experience, which is not particularly impressive. So I think Callum Shepherd can be doubly annoyed that he's not riding that horse this weekend.
If you're going that route, you go the Westover Colin Keane route, probably, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. That's if that's the principle, Fran, you're absolutely spot on. you would be looking for someone with a a terrific record at the venue.
And is the biggest danger, Fran, if you are Rab Havlin, who it's going to be, that your horse gets lit up, or are you more worried about traffic?
Traffic and just the way the race may pan out, but likely that given that Los Angeles will want a strong gallop, that I think there'll be enough pace on the race. And one thing that's underappreciated at Curragh, there's a very short run to the first bend, only a little over a furlong. That often they go a quick gallop into the bend. That should get ambient friendly, relax. And look, he's a hold up horse, a horse that will need cover to relax anyway. So once he gets that, but it'll be interesting to see the tactics and how it plays out.
Well, Fran, let me ask you about Los Angeles. Nervy, sweating, mulish at the stalls before the Derby, definitely used to help set up the race for City of Troy. It was a tough day at the office for him. Is he going to be able to bounce back, do you think?
I think it might be the making him, Graham. I think that boldness and energy that he used to start to run as well as he did now, there's no doubt he was used as a semi-pace-making role in the Derby to some extent, following the loose horse and his stable companion, but he'll either go one way or the other from that. And again, like Epsom, that walk and canter across to the curve for a mile and a half won't have the noise maybe of Epsom, but it can get horses lit up and he'll have to behave as well. So it all depends on that. But I'm being friendly, step forward, and I think he sets a really good standard. And the Curragh, once he settles and things go smoothly for him in the race, I just think he may well have a little level above his rivals at present. Matsuri, what's your opinion on him, lads? I don't know a lot about him at present.
I've got my notes here, and it's just who knows question mark. Absolutely bolted up in a minor event at Leicester, but it's a world of difference this weekend.
The sectional times were really impressive. He got a time figure of just 80, but with the upgrade for the last 3 furlongs, it turns him into something like a 111 horse. So the way that he runs, I mean, he was a little bit keen early on, wasn't he? And they put the hood on him, but he could have been just as keen as what he was, because the pace was so pedestrian in the early stages. By See the Stars, so you'd be hopeful that he'd stay 1.5 miles. And I think it's quite interesting that connections from a long way out suggested that this was more the plan rather than Royal Ascot, where they could have gone for the 10 furlong options there. So he's an intriguing runner because, to a certain extent, we've got a bit of a clue as to how good Los Angeles and Ambiente Friendly are. And they don't set a huge standard, do they? Whereas Matsuri, just straight out of novice company, okay, he's got about £8 to £10 to find, but it's not insurmountable, I don't think, necessarily.
And it's the sheikh who must be obeyed again, isn't it?
It is. It's a fascinating Dubai duty-free Irish Derby, 4:05 at Curragh on Sunday. Do not miss it. Time has beaten us. Thank you, gents. Thank you, Ed, Fran.
Well hosted, Scoop.
GC.
On that.
Thank you all, and thanks for listening. And we will be back again next week.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion, and tips.